Okay,
I'm
thank
Joe
you.
Schumacher. How are you?
Our next
Scott.
presentation
Good to meet
is
you.
going to be on leading from core values. And excuse me, my voice is going.
Thanks.
We have Joe Schumacher here from the Office of Personnel Management, our good friends at OPM. He is at the Center for Leadership Development in Denver. And Joe started out his work life as a 17-year-old manager of a high-traffic truck stop in Denver, which is more guts than I would have had at 17, let me tell you. He joined the Army and steadily rose in leadership roles, including graduating from the 101st Airborne Division's Leadership School and the 1st Armored Division's NCO Leadership Course. He served in a variety of uniform positions within Metro Denver Fire Departments, including one as Fire Chief. He's currently the Training Program Director at OPM's Leadership Development Institute in Denver. So please welcome Joe Schumacher.
Thank you. If it's okay with you, I don't have any PowerPoints. I don't do PowerPoints. I bet I don't get that applause at the end. And if you notice the handout, it says workshop. Workshop is defined as something where you participate. Otherwise, I got to talk for an hour and 15 minutes. That's a killer. So I'm not going to stand on the podium. I'll just work the crowd until you say you've had enough. So I don't know if you know that Pat and I and Todd were on the radio last week. It was tough on my ego because Todd's got this manly baritone, and I didn't sound as good, so he got to take the lead. So as I understand, it went very well. So good. I left Denver yesterday afternoon in a massive snowstorm, so I understand it's headed this way. I'm hoping I brought it. Yeah, I'm hoping I go back and fly over it before it hits. I'm out of here tomorrow night, so good. Hey, I always check in with my wife every morning, so I called and have to tell her what I'm going to do. And she said, "Who are you speaking with today?" And I said, "Well, a group of federal leaders." And I said, "Hey, I think I'll be charming, witty, and intellectual. What do you think?" She says, No, just be yourself. So we'll try that. So our topic today is on leading with core values. And if you don't have a handle on your core values, we got a real short exercise to grab onto it. You gotta know what's driving you internally. What do you bounce everyday decisions off of so that you stay on the right path and don't get yourself in trouble? So if we don't accomplish anything else this afternoon, you'll have a feel for your core values and also leadership. It's amazing to me, and I do a lot of workshops around the country, and you talk about leadership, and there aren't that many people that can define leadership. So we'll do that. We'll take a minute in your own words. Hey, I did some time at Michigan State's Adult and Continuing Education doctoral program. I only learned a couple of things, and one of them was adults don't like to be called out. They don't like, "Hey, give me your definition of leadership." They do not like that at all. So I won't do that to anybody unless there's zero participation, then I'm going to draft. So you got to participate when we get to a couple of spots here. So you'll leave with your definition of leadership. I'll give you mine. Nobody's wrong no matter how you define leadership. You are most likely right. So we'll cover that too. I try to scan the newspapers for weeks trying to find something we can talk about under the heading of core values and ethical leadership. There has just been an absolute dry, nothing in the paper, no scandals, no nothing. Everybody's being good at the local and state and federal level, and it's really messing me up. A few years ago, I could be the governor of North Carolina's allegedly, on the Appalachian Trail when he's in South America doing things. Always something. South. Whoa, okay. And I said, no, okay. The North Carolina contingent is doing the big activities tonight at the, yeah, that's what I understand. Okay, all right. South Carolina. Yeah, anyway. But I did find something, and it does lead right into what we're going to talk about today. You may have seen, this is a story from USA Today today. And it starts out with facilities no CPR policy takes heat after woman's death. Bakersfield, California, 89-year-old, I give you the bullet like it's a 911 dispatch center. 89-year-old female collapses, heart stops. The policy, the protocol of the center is no CPR. You should know that there was no DNR, no do not resuscitate certificate on file for the patient, and they let her die. Yeah, go ahead.
But the woman who made the 911 call, was not CPR certified or trained. So the issue was, would the facility be liable should she do something to cause more harm?
Right, I'm with you. Yeah, and that's and I'll just repeat that real quick, that the facility wasn't CPR certified?
Correct.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
was no nurses or anybody on the staff who was not.
Right, so we might, we'll not go into the legal argument, but we have to decide if the Good Samaritan law would apply or not, and it's a medical facility. I think there's an expectation that the staff would be trained in CPR. The 911 dispatcher even said, well, give me somebody, even a passerby, and I'll do it for you. So the reason I bring it up is that it's one of those that resonates with your gut and core value. Does it strike you as something's wrong? There's just something wrong here. And it brings up, if I have a manuscript we're tidying up for Todd's journal on core values, and my co-author has a PhD in ethical leadership from Oxford University, and I talked to him about it. And right away he goes, well, it's the Bell-Booker candle test. The bell is, does a bell go off in your head? Something's not right here, right? The bell in your head? Or the book test, look it up. What does the law say? And interesting that right away the people who weighed in were the medical ethics people at a lot of the universities are now weighing in on that. So that's the book test. And then the candle test is, so you get it out in the open, and the Supreme Court's once said the greatest of all sanitizer is sunlight. Get it out in the sunlight, and that's what's going to happen. So the Bell-Booker candle test, and the candle test is get it in the sunlight, and that's what's happening too through the media. They're running the story, and it's going to be evaluated. So if you run across an ethical dilemma, you might factor that in. What's the Bell-Booker candle test? Get it out there. If one of them might be, if it was on the front page of the newspaper tomorrow morning, would you be embarrassed? Those types of things. So if you have these ethical dilemmas come up, those are the kinds of things that you want to look at. Please.
I heard the same story over the press that everybody else did, but I think what bothered me was she was identified as a nurse. Now,
Yeah.
that can mean many things.
Yeah.
But I also understand she was not certified in CPR. I don't know that doesn't mean she wasn't qualified in CPR.
Right.
Or she did not have a knowledge base in CPR.
Yeah.
I don't know of any adults really, and especially adults working around people in some kind of a healthcare environment that don't at least know the basics of
Right.
CPR.
And it's going to shake out. That also brings up a critical, and I think what I was going to say there was, but they should have at least tried. They should have made an effort. And, the dispatchers are trained to walk people through. They turn to a tab, CPR, and they walk you through it. They tell you how to do it. And the new protocol is,
But the dispatcher wouldn't have been the one who would have been sued by
well, I understand.
the family. So
Right.
that is it's really the legal system that's made everybody so sue-happy.
Right.
That has complicated the
Yeah,
situation.
in a formal setting. If this was on the street, the Good Samaritan law would cover them, there'd be no problem. We'll have to leave it for another day on the debate, but that brings up a great point. I also wanted in here, they used the word, and it just grinds on my inner ear, was the executive director of the facility said, that's not our protocol. Well, change it. You can't just declare it's not the protocol. Should have at least tried. But the reason that we could get a real dandy spirited debate is because it's a core value. And that is what comes out of it. And so am I right and you're wrong? No. Are you right? No, we're both right. You just have to figure out what it's going to be. Yes, I have to.
Easy, we just can't hear the question. So
Got it, okay.
only half of the conversation.
Okay, we got it. All right, anything else?
So what's the cost of human life?
Right, yeah,
When it all weighs out, what's the cost of human life?
right. And people are making those decisions, and somebody's factored it in, and that's how they're going to do it. So, yeah, I'm with you. Okay, so good enough. I wanted to begin with the way I would have closed, which is in your leadership role, you need to think about. Can I just ask real quick? Showing of hands, how many are in a formal leadership role? And I would define that as you write annual performance reviews, you have a team. Yeah. Okay, I got it. Good. So what I would suggest, and I mentioned I would begin with how we typically might end. What do you want your legacy to be? When you're all done, what change will you have made in your job? What difference will you have made? You should think about that now, so when you retire, you have a legacy that you're proud of. So if you want your legacy to be that you told the best jokes at the holiday party, okay, if that's what you want it to be. I worked for a lot of people who their legacy was they just kept the wheels on the bus. They just kept going, nothing big happened, no improvements. You know, great leaders make improvements in self, others in process. And if you're going to interview for higher level jobs, you might want to drop that during an interview. That's something that most people catch their ear really quick on an interview panel. They talk about your leadership style. Well, I have a legacy, or I typically have shown that I have continuous improvement of self, others, and process. That's a pretty loaded phrase, right? Great leaders are constantly improving themselves, always have some kind of a reading list. They're always reading a good book, looking at something. Great leaders improve other people, correct? Make other people do better at their job, and great leaders improve process. I think you're going to find in these interesting budget times that a lot of the improvement's going to come from process. You can only bend and fold people so many different ways, and you're not going to get some quantum leap in productivity. You're going to have to look at process. How do you improve the process? Good. So think about that. What would you like your legacy to be? One of great leadership, that you truly made a difference. For a while, for about 8 years, I worked in the private sector. I was director of operations for a company north of Denver that manages the world's 911 database. Anybody know who they are? Good. That's exactly the way they want it. They're a secret as the CIA. They don't want it out there. But I ran their operations for about 6 years, then I ran their corporate university for a couple of years. And when I switched from operations into support, which was a corporate university, they gave me this nice party, and I really had to guess at what my legacy might be, but I was amazed at the number of people that came up to me and said that my legacy was moving people through the leadership pipeline. I was very, very flattered. I thought that was fantastic. And by the way, I've been in leadership roles for about 40 years and been a student and disciple of leadership, and I can tell you that the number one legacy, the number one difference you can make on the job is to stuff the leadership pipeline. If you move people through the leadership pipeline, you are doing great things. So something you want to think about. Are you teeing people up? Are they ready now? Are they moving through the pipeline? You know who had considered a strong leader, but the company collapsed when he left, was Lee Iacocca. He was a command and control kind of guy. He did not have people teed up ready now when he left and the place was in big trouble. So that's not the kind of leadership legacy that you want. All right, let's talk for a minute about presidential leadership. I typically don't talk about a present president for one reason, and I know that you might think it's to be, bend around political responsiveness, but it's not. Presidential historians will tell you you really can't know a lot about a president until about 10 years after they leave office. They've got their presidential library open. There's all kinds of information now. People can really drill down and get at the effect of their policies and other things. So we've had a couple of presidents out of office for quite some time. I'd like you to tell me the ethical blunder of this president. I was in the Army in the early 70s. I went home on leave in August of 1974. I came back, we had a new commander-in-chief. Do you know which president left during that time? Nixon. And what was his ethical blunder? Yeah, that's what I mean. So no, we haven't yet proven that he had his fingerprints on Watergate, but we darn sure know he lied to the public. And in the leadership role, one thing you can't do is lie to the public. So you must be very careful. Most of the public is very, very forgiving, and oftentimes they'll forget. But if you lie to them, it just doesn't go over well. And President Nixon spent the rest of his life trying to rehab his reputation and his legacy, didn't he? All he wanted to do was to be considered the elder statesman, to have presidents bring him into the White House and he would advise. None of that happened. So he had an ethical blunder. You can work for years. He worked for years to become president and was on a path to become really one of the great international Presidents, a statesman, yeah. He was on first-name basis with Brezhnev, and by the way, they were drinking buddies. A lot of things opened up China, correct? Yeah, but one ethical blunder tarnished his reputation. So that's bad stuff. Right, never said, yeah. Wrote a lot of books and other things, but he never quite recovered. So you want to remember that in your leadership role. Those of you who raised your hand and have direct reports, I have a very safe bet that I could win. I bet that I could call people on your staff and say, what time do you arrive for work in the morning? What time do you go to lunch? And what time do you leave in the afternoon? How often do you take breaks, correct? You're in a leadership role. The spotlight's on you. People are watching you. I made this up, but I don't think it's copyrightable. You know, even people who are a little slimy around the edges don't want to work for somebody who's slimy around the edges. They want to work for somebody who inspires them, right? Any definition of leadership, and there's hundreds of them, you're going to find the word inspire somewhere in that definition. They want to be inspired. They want to be pulled up to a higher level of performance. So they're watching your every move. When you come to work, you should remember, every move you make, they're going to watch. I don't care if you're remote, you work in LA and your boss is in DC, somebody always seems to find out if you cheat on your expense report. And only it just went through the wire to your boss. They're the only people that know. Some technician somewhere knows that. No matter what it is, they'll know. Just every once in a while I'll throw out a sidebar if it's of value to you. I can always tell when somebody's in trouble in a leadership role. They go to their office, they close the door, and they don't come out but a couple times a day. They're in trouble already. They don't like people. So they'll come out 2 or 3 times a day, right? A bio break in the morning and the afternoon, and they go get their lunch, and where do they go with their lunch? Back to their office and close the door. So people want to be inspired. You got to get out. You got to burn shoe leather. You got to let folks know that you care. They are not going to care about you till you show them how much you care. I think Covey said that. So you got to watch that carefully. So get out of your office. I know that it's a lot tougher when you have remote employees, isn't it? There's a whole school of thought on how you lead when you have remote employees. A lot more conference calls, you got to do visits, and now you probably had your travel budget cut. Just makes it tougher and tougher. The folks need a lot of attention, and they need it because they have to know you care. So ethical leaders get out, engage themselves with their staffs, write a lot of notes that say, hey, great job. You know that people will sit with their butt in their chair for years. 4 years, working hard. And all they want is what? The boss to come by and say, good job, nice job, thank you, any of those kinds of things. Yeah, appreciate your work. Be as specific as you want. Sometimes just thank you is all they want. And now they're good for like another 3 years. So I only need one accolade like a year, and that jazzes me for 2 or 3 years. I'm good. I got to tell you, I'm way beyond that now. I'm too old for that. There are other things that make me happy on the job. I have an incredible amount of leeway in my job. I can think of a class, and we were chatting with the ladies at what I understood from Todd to be the power table over here. I was chatting with the ladies, and they're telling, and I mentioned, hey, we got a class coming to DC. It's called, and I'm not advertising, it's called Media Strategies for Federal Executives. Came from just an idea, and my boss said, build it, launch it, do it. And it's June 11th and 12th. So that means a lot to me. We could probably do a list of good boss, bad boss. Would you help me just do a real quick one? We won't write it out. What are some of the things? How many of you have worked for a bad boss, a rotten boss? Okay. Now, can anybody tell me why is it a tremendous advantage to have worked for a rotten boss? You appreciate a good one. What else? You know what not to be like. You know, we do a lot of leadership classes, and we always do the good boss, bad boss, and I always go, you want to know the leadership secrets? You just take that list of bad boss stuff, and you do the opposite. Here's a true story. I was the fire chief on the west side of Denver. We were the home of the largest all-volunteer fire department in the nation for years and years. If you want to work hard at honing your leadership skills, work with volunteers. It could be at your church. It could be anything like that. I'm telling you, command and control is out even if you are the fire chief and you have 5 stars and all this, matching pens and beautiful gold stuff, and that's out. They don't care. You better be able to explain it or they're not going to do it. And you discipline one, you got to be careful. They'll shut down the whole firehouse. And you fire one and they'll stop responding across the city. So you got to be really careful. Anyway, so the story is, this would be in the mid-90s. We went this 3-4 year period where everything is going well. We're on the front cover of magazines. We're nationally recognized. And we're on, cable came through about that time. So we're on Channel 8, right, the local cable channel. Well, I answered to a 5-member board of fire commissioners. And one night the board president says to me, how come everything is going so well? Your crew, and I always made sure it was everybody but not me. So I'm surrounded by brilliant people. We're doing some really good stuff. And he asked me, how are you doing it? How are you making your decisions? I forgot we're on cable. And I said, it is really easy. I just think about how the fire chief would do it in Aurora, and I do the opposite. And if you know my background, I did about 9 years in Aurora, and I left because was major conflict with my core values and what I saw going on there with a lot of, I just sum it up. I know we're on camera. I can get it distilled down to this. At one time, there were 6 firefighters in the state pen. That's just an example of all the kinds of things going on from sexual harassment and other stuff. So I left. It was better for me to leave. So, one of the sayings in the fire service is you have 1 year of experience repeated 30 times. And it takes forever to get up to the top and really make some good changes. So I left. I went to a university in Michigan and taught for a couple of years. My core values, it was conflicting with my core values, and I moved on. Besides that, I was married to the fire chief's secretary, and she's telling me everything. Everything. So, yeah. So it's time for me to move on. So, hey, could we, I gave an example of someone, President Nixon, who had an ethical blunder. Can we go, I'm sorry? Still married to her? Yeah, 32 years. Yeah. All right, anniversary was a while back. I had to go to the fantasy section of Hallmark and find Hallmark cards and find a wedding card for a 32-year anniversary. Is like an endangered species. So when she's around and she hears me, then I'll say, well, we've had 3 good years together. A week here, a week there. It adds up to, yeah. Hey, so we gotta get serious now. Come on, stay with me. What's that? Yeah, I know. I interacted with the media for 20 years, so I know the drill, and too bad. I'm going to spontaneously do this. Yeah, it should be okay. Just kidding, babe. Just kidding. My spicy lamb kebab. Yeah. Hey, so let's go to a serious piece on the other side. We talked about President Nixon. One ethical blunder, lying to the nation one time, cost him a lot. Let's go on the other side to a leader who led by ethical example. Would you want to give me one? It has to be someone we all know. Yeah, Nelson Mandela, the person that made great personal sacrifice. 28 years in prison? 28? Yeah, and stuck to the core. Ronald Reagan? Yes. You have to tell me, give me why, give me a couple of, yes.
Well, he stood by his
Yeah. Whether you agree with his policies or not, he stood by his core values. He understood he was going to bust the chops of the Soviet Union one way or the other. Years ago I did a 2020 interview with Sam Donaldson. I had a couple hours with him, and I got to talk, and I said, tell me about Ronald Reagan. Was it true that people would say he would sit and it's almost like you had to go pull a cord and you'd get him to wind up, or he didn't function very well unless he had cards in his pocket, things like that. But it wasn't that way at all. He was a lot of times the smartest guy in the room. And they were telling me the story about when his first couple months in office, he had his cabinet together, and he went around and he talked to the Secretary of Education and say, this is what I need from your department, here's what I want you to do. And he turned to the Secretary of Defense and he says, I want you to break the Soviet Union. That's what he tells them. He said, go do it. And in the end they did, and you can argue about, the cost and other things. But he was true to his core values. Anyone else on? Lincoln, yeah. Yeah. If I could recommend, if you want a book that I think is outstanding, and I've been at it for 10 years with Doris Kearns Goodwin, her book on the political genius of Abraham Lincoln, Team of Rivals. I had that book 10 years ago, and we were using it in training classes. Now the movie came out, and suddenly it's popular. But that is someone who stuck with his core values for a long time. Mother Teresa is another great example. Core values, taking care of the poor, very humble, servant leadership, those types of things. So, and I want to mention Dr. King because I have him high on my list of mentors and role models. And one of the reasons is he's true to his core values, correct? He studied Mahatma Gandhi on peaceful demonstrations, civil disobedience, things like that. But I'll tell you why. I always pick somebody as a mentor, especially in the area of ethical leadership and core values, who has done things that I don't think I can do. And you bomb my house with my family in it, and I'm camera on or not, I'm going to get somebody. And his family's home when he is bombed. Really bad things happen with police dogs. I don't know if anybody has a fire service background, but the next time you see that film clip on TV where they've got Birmingham and the demonstration, they got the fire department out with a 2.5-inch hose line and a straight stream nozzle, and they're sweeping the street. If you watch carefully, that hose line can peel the bark from a tree, and it hits the telephone pole, and you can see pieces come out, and they're using that on human beings. That's just wrong. Fire department was never designed for crowd control like that, so that's misuse and abuse of public resources too. So, good. All right. Anybody else want to mention a great leader, core values, stuck with it? Rosa Meyer. I'm sorry. Golda Meyer. Yeah, I thought we had a cross there. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah, please. From Burma. Under house arrest for many years. Yeah, yeah. Who's that?
Iron Lady.
Iron Lady from Britain? Yes, okay. Have another one, if you want to drill down and study someone. I lost her name for just a second, the Crimean War, 1858. It'll come to me. I'm 59, so once in a while I lose my thought and then it comes back to me. So, but I'll come back. I don't even get embarrassed when I can't think of it anymore. So, good. Yeah. Florence Nightingale. Florence Nightingale. You know, she was a actuarial. What does an actuarial do? Yeah, they calculate life expectancy. She's an actuarial. She takes on the entire, not only the British Army, who are stuffy, but the British Medical Corps, who are like triple stuffy. She goes out on the battlefield and demonstrated the medical corps was killing a lot of their wounded soldiers. She demonstrated that type of care they needed, rapid transport, clean the wounds, field sanitation, other things. Their core values, great leadership. So pick your role models, mentors wisely. If you are looking to move up in the federal service, I would recommend a mentor and get someone that's not in your line of sight. It often works better if you have a mentor who is in another department, someone who's a fellow trekker, been down the road you're going, but your boss isn't always the best mentor. Because once in a while you might walk in and you might even have to say, I can't do my job, or I'm stressed out, or whatever. I wouldn't say that to my boss. But if you've got a mentor in another department somewhere and they can advise you, 9 out of 10 times you tell that to your mentor. You walk in and say, I don't think I can do this job. What most likely will they say? Yes, you can, and I've done it. I've been down that same road. I had the same feelings. You've got to stick it out. You've got to do these things. You find a mentor, you find a friend. Find an ethical mentor, someone who can keep you on the right path. Good. So we talked about ethics and ethical leadership, things like that. How about we take a minute and as an individual activity, would you write a couple sentences about how you define leadership? In your own words, you cannot be wrong. And I'll ask for volunteers. I just know we're going to get a couple people with some great stuff. So if I could just help real quick, I mentioned earlier there ought to be some word in there or synonym about inspire. And who do you want to inspire and what do you want to inspire them to do? If you string that together, you're about 90% there. Yeah, if we move into the Q&A, I will. Otherwise, I'll get close enough and I'll repeat it. Oh, yeah. No, no. Okay, good, good. Okay. Everything's good. Okay. I'm careful with my presidential stuff, but I've been, yeah. All right. I know that we could do like a half hour and still we'd have some great stuff, but we got to stay on schedule. I get in trouble for not covering everything I promised, so I don't want a Todd Wells reprimand, so we're going to have to move along here. Anybody care to share? There is no wrong answer on this one. Yes, please.
Okay, a leader imparts.
You're on.
A leader imparts a vision, a mission, and goals, gives you the tools and resources to get the goals accomplished, trusts you to do the job, and provides guidance when it's needed and praise when it's deserved.
Very good. If I was back at the university, I might have to say outstanding, and I'm forced to give you an A+ for the day. So I'll tell you why. Great leaders provide tools, training, and trust, and I'm hearing that in your answer. I heard trust, I heard tools, those types of things. Inspire people, that's outstanding. Yeah, very good. You got like 99% of what I would put into like the perfect definition of leadership. So, and usually I got to go through 8 or 10 people to get to that, so we got it on the first whack here. Anybody else want to contribute? Please. I'm coming. Thank you.
Leader is honest, inspiring role model that leads with encouragement, with accomplishments based on we.
Very good. Okay. Give me the first sentence again.
An honest, inspiring role model.
Okay. Good. Now, usually I have to go through 20 or 30 people to get to the next one, which is, and you've got it, and I asked this question, and it can be a little bit controversial, but your definition of leadership knocks out Hitler and Stalin and really bad people. And how did it do that? In your first sentence, right? Are you going to tell me that Hitler was an honest guy? No, you got to be kidding. Come on. He, like Stalin, declared war on his own people. I mean, really bad. I lived in Germany twice, once in the early 60s, and I was in the Army myself in Nuremberg, and I visited Dachau twice. If you think you're having a bad day as a federal employee, you should visit the concentration camp. You go, we live in one of the great countries, because you cannot do what Hitler and Stalin did unless you usurp almost all of civil rights, declare war on your own people, those kinds of things. So that is very good. The word honest or integrity. Role model. Were they a role model? No. What happened to you? What would happen to you in the Soviet Union if you didn't comply with what they wanted? Yeah, the Gulag, right? Siberia. Yeah. Could have been up to 10 million people at one time. Yeah. So really bad stuff. In fact, in Nazi Germany, people were turned in to the Gestapo just for the way they thought. They said something at dinner and they found themselves in a concentration camp. So. Any other definition? That's pretty darn good. 2 of them that do really well. All right, we're going to add to it.
I'd like to add to it. There are 2 books I've read. One is the Lance Sijon story. The other is by John McCain called Courage. And I like the philosophy of why Lance Sijon was considered such a strong hero and a leader. He was afraid, but he also got up and he showed his courage. And John McCain also says, courage doesn't mean you're without fear. Right. And he walked ahead of his troops, Sijon did, with bullets flying. He was willing to do what he asked them to do.
Right. Now you got to stay with me. I haven't read that book. So is this a combat infantry officer, or who is it?
Yes, Sijon was. Yes,
okay.
In Vietnam.
Very good. Yeah. Want to be inspired, just read some of the stories about the POWs too. That's some bad stuff. Very good. I said I wouldn't draft, but you got a lot of stuff written there, would you? Okay, go ahead.
Good leader is someone who has the ability by example and action to inspire employees to perform the best of their ability to the task that needs to be done, build up and train the ones that need help.
Yeah, good. I'm hearing at the end there, improvement of others, and that the task is important. It isn't just inspiring other people. You got to inspire them to do other things, to do great things. Yeah, that's very good. Wow. So I would just take all of those and merge them, and he got like this perfect definition of leadership. So I spent 40 years on mine, and I got gutted at the Federal Employee Women's Conference. I'm going through my definition of leadership, and the lady in the front row says, "Well, your definition would include Hitler and Stalin." I go, "Oh no, I got to go back to the drawing board." I had to start all over again, and had to start. I do have mine in here. I'm just going to read it on page 2. You don't necessarily have to turn to it, but leadership is about the. I'm at the last paragraph at the bottom of page 2. It says administrative management is a hard science, and then I lead into authentic leadership, about an everyday display of exemplar character and integrity, right? The everyday display and contagious passion. Have you ever seen anybody be highly successful in their position if they aren't passionate about it? If you aren't passionate about your work, you're probably in trouble. I just have not seen that happen. And I got to give you this advice if there are folks in the room who aren't in a leadership role and you're thinking about it. If you don't at least like people, I wouldn't consider taking a leadership position. And the most successful leaders really do love the folks that they work with. They do in that special kind of love that you'd have for a fellow human being. Do you have a question? Oh, just a minute. Otherwise, I thought it was like an auction. You moved, and I thought you're up. Okay, go ahead.
Can you get somebody to run that microphone for you?
Yeah, Todd, wake up, Todd. I like Mr. Anderson's definition, but the leadership that brought me up and probably helped me to get where I am today, one of the things that inspired me the most was they got me to realize what my potential was.
Right.
Not only did they want me to perform to the maximum of it, but they actually inspired me to realize what I had the potential to become.
That you could do more than you thought you could? Yeah, that's excellent. Okay, very good. Now I have to demonstrate again that sometimes I lose my thought. So where was I? Because that was a valid sidebar. That added to our definition. Oh, if you don't like people, I wouldn't get in a leadership role. It just doesn't work. Because it won't be long and you'll be the person behind the door, right? Your office door is closed. You've got to really like people, like to engage people, get out there, mix it up with them, solve their problems, inspire them to do the near impossible. Great teams achieve the near impossible. What's Lance's last name, the biker who's fallen from? Armstrong, yeah. He's toast, right? He's toast. He can't even admit he did it right. He can't even say he apologized right. The whole thing did not go well. He did not get good media advice. So once again, years of unethical conduct all came back to get him. He's fallen from grace. So good. So if you're an emerging leader, you're thinking about moving into a leadership role, watch other leaders, see if it's something you might enjoy doing. You know what my favorite or least favorite thing to hear from folks who are in a leadership role? They want the prestige, the power, the money, the reserved parking place, the cherrywood office furniture, all that stuff. And then they say, I just don't have time to do the leadership piece. I don't have time to do regular one-on-one discussions with their employees. I mentioned I might do a couple of quick sidebars. Here's one. You got to have regular one-on-one discussions with I never call them subordinates, never. If you're reading a leadership book and they say subordinate, I'd close it up and take it back to the library. It's no good. You can't call people subordinates. That doesn't work well. I'll use employee. I like job holders, but I really like colleagues. Co-workers is fine, but I really like colleagues. And when I spent 2 years at a university, you can go ahead and tear the jugular out of one of the folks in a meeting, but you have to preface it with, I'd like to respond to my distinguished colleague from the physics department. Then you nail them. So you got to have that kind of civil discourse. But you got to have regular one-on-one discussions, correct? So a couple of and water cooler discussions are fine. A walking one-on-one is fine. I like to use I like to ask people, what's on your plate, what's on your mind, what's on fire? Now we're going to show that we care, right? What's on your plate, what's on your mind, what's on fire? I had a question. I'm getting a workout.
How do you balance, because a lot of people, I don't know about here, but I know here in the Washington area, people are promoted because of their technical excellence and not because of their leadership.
Everywhere.
And we're not given the time to be able to do the leadership and to meet with our people. We're asked to do the technical job as well. So we're asked to do both.
Yeah.
And I had a manager, who's an administrative manager, say to me, my job is 100% to coach, and he tries to get there, and then he's pulled off on everything else. So what are you suggesting that people do at this time? Because we're getting pummeled.
Yeah, that's a good word. I understand. I got to chat with the ladies earlier. I mentioned I came from the private sector, and where there's an expectation, I guess it depends on the job. You're going to do 12-hour days, and you are going to come in on Saturday. And I'm seeing more and more people in the federal sector now doing that too. I was going to give you my answer, how I handle it when you come in a little earlier, you might have to stay a little bit later, you might have to give up part of your lunch hour, whatever it is. You got to carve out the time to interact with your people or you lose them. Morale goes down. You know, Ben Franklin said many a career has been made after the dinner hour. What does he mean? Yeah. You don't have an 8-hour day a lot of times in a leadership role. And what I meant when I was chatting with the ladies is, one of the core values that usually pops up, and I think we're going to do an exercise here in a minute, is you've got to have some kind of work-life balance. You got to figure it out so you're not going to kill yourself. Or you'll put in 14-hour days, you'll fry your brain. And I don't think they're going to put on your tombstone, this guy worked 14-hour days, we were all impressed. No, it doesn't work that way. You got to have work-life balance. And you can talk to the average police chief, fire chief. I'll tell you who else works harder, superintendent of schools. They get beat up by everybody, from the union to the parents to everybody's on them, the school board, and they're pretty tough folks, but they're putting in long hours too. So it's becoming standard and part of the job. I know it's hard. You're doing more, you're doing a whole lot more with a whole lot less. I'm not complaining, I want you to know, because we've got just a wonderful staff where I come from, but we're down 8 people. We only had 21 when I started 5 years ago. We're down 8, and almost all of them are program directors. That's a high-level design, delivery, revenue generating. I'm not complaining. We're making it happen, but I'm just wondering how long how long can you do that? Most people, I think, agree with that. So. Yeah, so you got to carve out the time. So you have one-on-one discussions, what's on your plate, what's on your mind, what's on fire. The other one that you might want to ask is, what should we start, stop, and continue to do? And I'm going to tell you, if you're newly promoted or you're going to move to another business unit and there's been problems, I'd get out my Big Chief tablet and a crayon, and when you ask that question, what should we start, stop, and continue to do, they're going to load you up. They'll tell you what's wrong, and then all you have to do is the opposite. That's all. So, good. All right, we got great definitions of leadership. You know how many definitions there are? About 880. You know, another one of my favorites. Anybody know how many books are out there that start out with the title, Leadership Secrets of? Well, 200,000 is a good guess. I appreciate the participation. There's 87. From what? Leadership Secrets of Santa Claus, Reagan, both Bushes, Clinton, the disciples, Jesus Christ. You know the number one bestseller was Genghis Khan. Leadership Secrets of Genghis Khan? No, but Santa Claus, by the way, in my opinion, was the best of all of them. The reason I bring it up is you got to help me with this. If you can't, I know I'm standing between you and happy hour, but you got to stick with me on this one. Are there any leadership secrets? No. You know, if you read Doris Kearns Goodwin book on Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln, Team of Rivals, so what did you see the movie? I haven't seen it, but the guy's out in the trenches. You know, in 1983, Peters and Waterman wrote the book In Search of Excellence. The whole chapter is dedicated to this really unique and radical concept called management by walking about. Who was doing that in 1862? The president, come on. There are no leadership secrets. You can go back and study the Bible and find, the delegation of authority and economies of scale and other things. There aren't any leadership secrets. So I share that with you because there aren't any masters of leadership either, unless you have a PhD in psychology and have interviewed probably everybody in the world. It just doesn't work that way. There are too many unique personalities. In leadership, you're dealing with the innermost emotions of people, and no one can master that. I say that because it should elevate your level of confidence. You can't get it all. If you operate off your core values and you bounce everything off of that and your core values are respectable, you're probably going to be fine. The other piece you have to have, you got to apply a massive dose of common sense to the problems that you face. And I've found 90% of the time that'll get it taken care of. So get in tune with your core values. Apply a massive dose of common sense. There's another one, not so minor either. Ask the people who are doing the job. They'll tell you what the problem is and most likely tell you what the solution is. Worst thing you can do when you take over is roll in and go, I know what's best. Watch this. You know the ones I hate the most? Is the new boss rolls in, he's got a book under his arm. Please don't. I know which one it is, too. It's going to be In Search of Excellence. It's going to be Execution. It's going to be Good to Great. And they're going to operate off of that. You go, people just cringe. You know why? Because most people know how to dance around that, and they've seen that before. They're just going to wait them out, and they'll move on. So, one other quick sidebar, and then we'll talk about, core value, how do you define it? How do you get in touch with your core values? So how would you get your arms around this elusive topic of leadership? I mentioned earlier, great leaders engage in continuous improvement of self, others, and process, all right? You got to continually improve yourself. You got to get on some kind of a reading program, and this is what I would do. Next time you have a long weekend, you're a dedicated federal employee, and you take your leadership position seriously, I'd go to the library, and I'd just get 10 books on leadership. Any 10 that interest you. Any from, Wooden on Leadership is an outstanding leadership book, but I try not to get too much into the sports stuff because then it's all about sports. But that guy was a genius when it came to leadership. I'd go get 10 books, bring them home for the long weekend, I'd start reading them. What do you think's going to happen, like the third, fourth, and fifth book? You're going to see replication. Okay? And by the time you get to the 10th one, you go, I probably don't need to read the book. I already know what's in it. I haven't seen much in the latest. Good to Great had some interesting new stuff that came out. That's about it. So, but it gives you, once again, gives you confidence. If you've studied for a master's thesis or a doctoral dissertation, what do they tell you to do? You're working on a hypothesis. You need to get your arms around the body of knowledge out there. What do you have to do? Review the literature, right? That's the phrase, review the literature. So you'll go do that. As you want to earn your own PhD in leadership, you go review the literature. Find out great mistakes, ethical blunders, and how people did things right. You can legally stand on the shoulders of giants. You don't have to reinvent. What are the best practices? I'd mentioned about Team of Rivals. If Dr. Goodwin had consulted with me before she published the book, I would have said, it's not about the political genius of Abraham Lincoln, it's about the leadership genius of Abraham Lincoln. His Team of Rivals, who there were, Bates and Chase and Stanton, all of those, Stewart, all of those. He takes these rivals, folks who tried to take him out for the 1860 presidential, he puts them on what is considered today to be the greatest war cabinet ever. He puts them on in his cabinet, and they do great things. So, good. Todd, I hate to put you on the spot. Did we build a break in? We did not. But okay, we're going to keep rolling? About 30 minutes. 30 minutes, okay. Well, we'll do fine then. A little bit more than that. Okay. All right, I don't feel under pressure then. All right. Good. Hey, I just want to talk about, so what is a core value, a true value? It's something that's strong enough to influence your behavior, decisions, attitudes, and all forms of expression, deep down. There's one thing we absolutely have to do before we can go today, and that would be, you got to get in tune with your core values. Does anybody want to share a core value that you have? We'll go through the exercise, but is there one that jumps out? I'm going to tell you now, work-life balance is big for me. And I got to have autonomy at work. I got to have elbow room. That's big for me. Just tell me what you want done. Please don't tell me how to do it, and I can do great things. Well, some people think it's great. I think it's great. Other people think it's mediocre, but what the heck? Anybody have a core value you want to share? Please. Integrity, yeah. You messed me up in one way. That is, if that's not on your list, you got problems. Yeah, thank you. Usually we go through the exercise. I'm not hearing integrity, but we got it right off. Okay, character and integrity is everything. Anybody want to define integrity for me? Yes, I heard it. I have hypersensitive hearing. I caught that one. And who was the kind soul that... Okay, we'll send this down, and we have to have everybody hear this because it was that good. First we get integrity, then we get the definition.
Doing what's right when no one's looking.
Correct. Yeah. I wouldn't want to put you on the spot. Anybody at that second power table be able to tell me the difference between honesty and integrity? Okay, that's okay. Honesty and integrity, what's the difference between the two? It's not a trick question. There is a difference. No, we can't give it back to her. It makes her. She's already contributed. No, you're okay. I don't want to put you on the spot. Yeah. So honesty is you just give a straight answer, yes or no. You're honest with your staff when they have questions about budget stuff, things like that. You got to give them an honest answer, okay? But integrity is being good when nobody's looking, and there's a real difference. We've had presidents get in trouble because they had an ethical blunder, correct? Integrity caused them major problems. Good. All right. So this is second participation. Could you flip to the last page of the handout? And I've given as a pretty comprehensive list of core values. And this exercise works best if you just move through quickly. What resonates with you? Pick 5. No, you only have to pick 4 because one was pre-chosen. And which one was that? Integrity. All right. Scan it and grab the 4 that jump off the page for you. And there are a couple of them I don't even know the definitions. If you have to ask, then just skip it because it's no good. Did you say we're missing one? And what is it?
Humility.
Well, that could be big. That's big. You put it down. You will get extra credit. I would expect that from, you gave the prayer at lunch. I would expect that from you. Are you my pastor of a church?
Yeah.
Yeah. In North Carolina, not South Carolina? Okay. Okay. One more minute. What's your first name?
Andy.
Andy.
Everybody calls me.
Andy, okay. All right, anybody need more time? Okay. All right, well, we're going to proceed then. So this wasn't a trick list or anything, but there is one monster one that's not on the list. And Andy, I heard him over here working on something. All of a sudden I hear him say, there's one missing from the list. And it is, Andy? Humility is huge. You know, servant leaders are all about being humble. I mentioned I work for this company north of Denver. They're the 911 experts. I've been at national conventions where the president and CEO of the company would get awards. Most humble guy I ever met. He'd go up to get the award, and he only used the word "I" one time, and he would start with "I am accepting this award on behalf of all the wonderful people in blank company," and then the rest of the time was "we" and the great employees and those types of things. He only said "I" one time. So, I was a senior manager of a data integrity unit when I was first hired. And when people are treated right as subject matter experts and given enough elbow room, things like that, celebrate successes, they'll do great things. The other trick is you got to get out of their way, which I did. Well, anyway, after a while, we hit every performance metric, every one. So we had a small celebration and awards were given. I asked not to have an award. I stayed in the background. And then we had a really nice cake and ice cream. And the president of the company showed up. And he handed out the awards, and then he says, "Let's do cake and ice cream." He got right down there, and he cut the cake and handed it to me, and I put the ice cream on. It was spontaneous. It was just the right thing to do. We were going to be the servants, and they were going to, yeah. The only thing I knew was, having 20 years in the fire service, if you can't cook, you're toast. And he happened to ask what kind of cake is, and of course I had ordered it. And it was a poppy seed white cake with a raspberry in the middle, and then a cream cheese frosting. I could call it off like that, because that's how you do it in the firehouse, I'm telling you. Chief would show up, want to know what's for lunch, you better be able to tell him. So, but servant leadership is really big. Robert Greenleaf wrote a lot about servant leadership, ethical leadership. He would be a good read. You can go search that on the internet and get that free. Could I mention one thing about servant leadership? There's a massive, almost readily accepted erroneous assumption about servant leadership, and that is you dance around marginal non-performers. Not so. One of the big concepts of servant leadership is you deal with the marginal performer, because it affects the whole team, and it's about the team, the team, the team. So that's what's impressive to me about servant leadership. Good. Would anybody share a couple of your core values? I know everybody. Showing of hands, who had integrity? Okay, very good. You passed. And Todd, you're right. It's a brilliant group. And he told me it was a fun group. And at first I thought I was in trouble, because my lovely wife will tell you, if you ask her what's the one thing about me she doesn't care about, is I am, quote, not fun. Not fun. So we got a fun group. So got through that. All right. Fun is a core value. And that's perfectly acceptable. You know, I was undercover at lunch, and I sat with a group of gentlemen, and then we're talking about the new younger people coming on board, the Gen X and the Millennium and all that stuff, and they just don't have a lot of mentors that are guiding them. They want to have fun. They expect to come to the job and have fun. They have one other expectation too. They're hired as a GS6, and on their one-year performance review, they're asking when they can be an SCS. So, got to be ready for that. Do you know they want to have, they expect performance feedback. They want it. It's part of it, yeah. But having fun is huge. That's big, is to have fun. We have a new boss at our center, really a good guy, ethical leadership. He's transparent in a positive way about authentic leadership. But he likes to have fun, and there can be tension at a staff meeting. He's always got this way of making something, he never embarrasses anybody, but it's kind of fun. He can turn it around from tension to fun, and people walk out going, that's just a great meeting. So that's a unique skill. Having fun is a legitimate core value. What else? Please. Respect for others. Respect for others, yes. I'm elevating that just under integrity. And it allows me to segue into a critical piece here, because we have about 15, 20 minutes. You know, I have a fire service background. What does CPR stand for? Yeah. And in an administrative setting, what does it stand for? Courtesy? Courtesy, professionalism, and respect. Yeah, and you brought it up, so you get credit for bringing it up and credit for getting the whole thing. I wanted to copyright that. I thought I was on to another one of these great sayings until I'm at the Federally Employed Women's Conference. A young lady in the front row says to me, that's great, but it's on the fender of every police car in New York City. Courtesy, professionalism, and respect. She messed me up. Had she not been there, I'd have published a book. I'd be galactically famous, everything. But Nothing could be copyrighted, whatever. But anyway, you want people to achieve the near impossible, do great things, you just treat them with CPR. Hypothetically, if you were forced to choose one of the three, courtesy, professionalism, and respect, which would you choose? If you have basic respect in the workplace, you have about everything you need. Basic respect. There is nothing worse in the workplace than an office bully, and you have to put a stop to it in your leadership role because they undermine respect and morale and cause major problems. You got to step up and take them on, and there are ways to do that. Not here today, but maybe next year I'll come back. How to deal with the office bully. Yeah. And I've seen some really bad ones in leadership roles too. CPR is critical. So we have integrity taken care of. I'm raising those to the level of a super core value. Yes, comment in the back, please. Oh, you're ahead of us. Good. Let me just make sure I got it taken care of now. So integrity's got to be on your list. If you're in a leadership role, you're going to have some problems, okay? Bounce everything against that. You would be in good shape. You want people to achieve the near impossible? Try courtesy, professionalism, and respect. I'd have humility high on my list because people love folks who are humble. You want to be humble. I was asked a year ago, my boss, who has since retired, wanted to put me in for an award, and I said, no, I don't want you to do it. If it's not a team award, I don't want nothing to do with it. It's got to be a team award. I'd be glad to accept it and have my name along with everybody else. So it was my way of saying it just doesn't work for me. So, oh, he has the mic, so he runs the show. You got it.
Accountability.
I'm sorry, what is it? Accountability. And I'm putting that in my top 5. Todd, you were right. Brilliant group. I don't have to try to bend around and say, what do you guys think of, like, humility and integrity? It's coming out. Accountability is big. You're accountable, everybody else is accountable. Leadership by example is one of the most powerful leadership concepts you can have. I mentioned earlier, you're in a leadership role. Folks know on your team what time you go to lunch, come back, take breaks, cheat on your expense report, that type of stuff. Can't do it. They'll see it. They know it. It travels. Rumor gets out there. It undermines your credibility. You lose credibility, you lose trust, you lose the team, they disengage. In the private sector, I'll tell you now, there'll be turnover. You'll have work unit collapse, and they'll bring in somebody to get it all fixed. By the way, I would recommend, don't ever turn down an opportunity to move to a work unit that has collapsed. You got nowhere to go but up. You watch those coaches, a football coach in the pros takes over the worst team in the NFL. The next year they win the Super Bowl. What went on? You didn't change over anybody except the leadership. So they went from chumps to champs, from worst to first. That's great leadership. You watch people like Vince Lombardi move, I think it was New York Giants. I think he was on the same team as the Dallas Cowboys coach for years. And Landry. He goes to Dallas, takes over a fledgling team, but Lombardi goes to this small market up in Wisconsin, turns them into powerhouse. By the way, here's a core value. He always got the new people together the first year. He'd get the rookies together, and he would say to them, if you don't get your core values straight, you got major problems. And then he would tell them what they were. God, family, football. And if you didn't keep it in that order, you had major problems. And the folks who did, again, achieve the near impossible, played hurt, did all kinds of things. You can see those interviews today. He always had great advice. He always was ethical. He was up front, was a great ethical leader. So, good. So there were quite a few hands up. Yes. Todd, you have to help. What's that?
Mine was communication.
Good. Now tell me a little more, because a lot of times people don't know exactly what that is. Tell me if you're known as a leader who has great communication skill, what are you doing? What does it look like?
For me, when on my staff, I have to go, like, nobody sits in the same area. So for me, I have to physically go to them, go talk to them, making sure that I have one-on-ones with them individually.
Good.
So that they can tell, like, being an active listener. So I'm able to sit down and I let them tell me what's going on, what's the problem.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been doing what they've done. I've only worked for the government for 4 years.
Very good.
Some people on my staff have worked for 30 and 40 years. So I need them to explain to me what the problem is or what they're doing.
Good.
And how can I help them improve?
Very good. I like that. There's a little phrase in there, my ear bent right away when I heard you say active listener. Great leaders listen. If you're doing one-on-ones, you ought to be doing 90% listening and 10% talking. If you're doing all the talking, it's not going to work. Let them talk. Let them tell you what's on their mind, what's on their plate, what's on fire, what should we start, stop, and continue to do. You might have a suggestion you might want to do with your team. You might, hey, what do you think of this? Would this fly if I did this? You know, a lot of time the bargaining unit, the union, they just want that type of respectful relationship. Could you just tell me what are some of the things you're thinking about and work collaboratively? They do not like it when the mandate comes out. Command and control does not work very well anymore. Anybody help with this one? Where does command and control work really well, though? Military, right? Yeah, in combat especially. Where else? A crisis, yeah. And that could be public safety, I can tell you now. My brother's still on the fire department in Aurora, and he responded to the theater. I'm telling you now, when they got there, they were slamming people into the back of police cars with one paramedic and an IV bag and stuff, and they're sending them. That's the kind of direction you want, right? Yeah, grab and go. It's got to be done that way. SWAT team, all that stuff. I just can't imagine a Marine Corps platoon sergeant, in combat saying to his troops, hey, we've been ordered to take the hill. We got a couple of options here. What do you say we take the hill, and there's bad people up there, and they got grenades and flamethrowers and all kinds of stuff, or we can go back to the barracks and drink beer. Showing of hands, what do you want to do? Yeah, drink beer. It just doesn't work that way. There's times when you have to have that. And you could have an office crisis, right? You can have an office crisis, too, requires that. I was the acting center director for a couple months. The very first day, our maintenance guy who does a lot of things, he's sitting in his truck in the parking lot having a major heart attack. That's on day one. And then it just kind of went that way for the 6 months I was acting center. Every day something happened. We contract with a hotel across the street, if you've been to our center, and I was acting center director over the January 1st New Year's holiday, and there's a shooting at the hotel. It's like, it just doesn't get any better than this. I mean, one rate I thought I was back as a fire chief. Every day, some crises. So, by the way, in a crisis, people are watching your every move. If you panic, they're going to panic. And if you go over the edge, General de Gaulle said that during a crisis, a person falls back on themselves. You know what that means? You're going to go drop into your secondary behavior. You have your regular temperament, and then there's secondary behavior when you panic. There's an instrument out there called the Hogan instrument. I think it's HDI. It measures your likely response during a crisis. That's an interesting one. So, good. Anything else? We got core values. Any others? Please. Commitment. You got to, like communications. You got to tell me a little more. Tell me more. Commitment to who,
Well,
how.
Nobody likes a quitter. I mean,
Okay.
if you're going to lead, you've got to be committed to what you're doing. If you're not, they'll see it and they won't follow you.
Yeah, very good. Committed to your job, to the people who trust you to do your job. You know, I mentioned earlier, I've had a lot of different leadership roles, and only one time did I melt down. And I know people think, yeah, I was like as fire chief. Well, no, I didn't think that was a very hard job at all. But when I was a director of operations, we had some stuff happen in the 911. You get sued all the time. 911 calls are misrouted. There's no record found. Bad stuff happens. And we got hit like 6 or 8 lawsuits. All came down, and some other things. And I had gone in to my boss and said, I can't do the job. I'm going to leave. And he said something to me that just gutted me, just hit me interocularly, which was, what are all your people going to think? And what was he saying was, you know what? We moved you into this position. We think you're the right person for it. You've been at it 6 months and you're telling me you're going to walk? It's like, no, I'm not. Goodbye. No, I'm not. That's all I needed. And of course he gave me the pep talk. Look, I went through the same thing you're going through, right? Here's some of the things that I experienced, and I'm going, wow, this guy is powerful. He's one of the best leaders I ever saw, and he's telling me that he went through the same thing. Well, I can do that. So, yeah, good. Couple more on core values. Yes, ma'am. Practicality, that jumped off the page for you. Yeah, I'm kind of that way too. Want to tell me a little more? How do you define it? What do you see on the job?
Having to make a decision between what's feasible given limited staff and oftentimes monetary resources
Yeah.
versus what's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck.
Good.
Just being able to sit down and make a reasonable decision based on as much available information as you can, as you have.
Very good.
To see how we're going to move forward, given
Good.
everything that we have to do, what's nice to do, and production problems.
I'm gonna take a really wild guess, but everything you just said, we're probably gonna see a lot more of that here really soon. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, people are gonna watch how you react. You gotta stick with it, be committed, show passion, can't panic. I mentioned I have a new boss at our center. I don't think the guy he's a former police officer out of Plano, Texas, and just doesn't seem to get riled over anything. Because I watch for that, because I typically don't get worked up from my background too. And man, I'm telling you, there's the daily crisis that comes in. Matter of fact, sends email, I need to know this, this, and this. Really well done. So, and very practical. What can we do? And once again, the ladies and I got to chat quite a bit before we started here today. It's practical for us to move training classes now away from the centers, the brick and mortar, and move them to Philadelphia and D.C. and Dallas and L.A. It's practical. So we're going to see more of that. One more? Oh, a question in the back. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's good. That's a great question. And it falls up under work-life balance. That I had done my time in the fire service, and 12-hour days I can work with, but 12-hour days, and then you got to get up at 2 in the morning because the media's at a 3-alarm fire and they're blistering the people there. So when I hit 18-hour days, I decided that was enough. But I had put in 20 years, and that was, professional firefighting, I should just say firefighting because there's a lot of volunteers, is a lot like professional sports. It's just a young person's game. Man, by the time you get in 20, 25 years, your knees, your back, your neck, everything's just about gone. So it was time to say, I'm going to try something different. But a large part of it was family. It was just, but I did try hard at work-life balance. I worked 5 minutes from where my kids went to school. Every day I went to had lunch with one of my kids while they're in grade school. But if any of you are parents, by the time they get to junior high, they want nothing to do with you coming to school. Please don't. Yeah, please. Yeah, please. One of my boys got hurt wrestling in high school, and my wife fired off the bleachers, was down on the floor next to him. He separated his shoulder, and all he's saying is, "Mom, please get away." He didn't want her down there, So, good. All right, one last one, please.
There's a question. I was wondering if you saw core values as situational. Wondering if you saw core values as being situational. Do they change with the type of groups or people?
Yeah, well, that's a good one, and I use the word situational in the handout. But there are some that are. I'm looking for the attorney's word. It's you just can't split it, and that would be integrity and things like that. There are others. Well, I might adjust as we go with a group. Things like that, depending on the job. But I'm not going to compromise integrity. I mentioned earlier I left at least one job for that. I couldn't watch a lot of that go on. So, and someone might say, especially the gentleman said commitment. Well, I wasn't going to wait 30 years to try to fix it. I was going to move on. I took a circuitous route to become the chief. Usually you stay one place 30 or 35 years. The fire service saying is like 300 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. So I just felt I needed to move on. But yeah, it's a great question. A lot of it is situational, but not on it. It's unbendable on character and integrity, work-life balance. You see soldiers do that. They're going to be deployed. Their work-life balance is gone. They're not going to see their family for a year, but when they come back, you hope they can get the connection. Good. All right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Where's teamwork? Teamwork got to be way up there as well.
Yeah.
We all know it's innocuous. It fills in everything
Right.
else we're talking about.
Right.
Does a warrant being standing alone, or is this integral to everything else we're talking about?
Yeah, well, yeah. I'll tell you how you do it at the university. If somebody asks a question, you go, well, no, I don't know. So then you don't tell the group you don't know. You go, well, what do you guys think? Let's open it up to the group. What do you think? But I think you answered the question well, which it's integral to what we're talking about. It's probably an overall, you got integrity and other things, but it's all going to flow. I guess I see it more as just a part of the leadership piece as opposed to core values. Plus, if I'm going to go with 5 of them, I can't fit teamwork in. You know what I mean. That's a great question. I'm not sure. You have to figure that one out. Yeah.
I wouldn't think that, that's like the problem of one in many.
Uh-huh.
A core value is an individual.
Individual core value,
not
yeah.
collective.
See, that is just so nicely done. I shouldn't have said anything. What does the group think? And then you give me that answer. Yeah, it's really nicely done. Yeah. Yeah. If everybody had the same core values, it'd be no fun at all, yeah. And you're a fun person. Yeah, please.
And the core value of respect leads to teamwork.
Yeah, very good. See, Todd told me there was collective genius in the room. He told me you were fun. He said you'd participate, everything else, so that's good. I got to kind of wind it down. I just want to make sure that we got your money's worth. So you've got your definition of leadership. No matter if everybody went through, we started over here and you went through the whole thing, would anybody's definition be wrong? No. Are there any leadership secrets? No. What's a core value? Yeah, that's your top core value. And what you are and what internally how you bounce it off. You have a lens. It's the most sensitive part of your lens that things pass through that. And it's how you think and then how you act and what becomes your habit, what becomes your actions, and then what becomes your legacy. Good. Anybody want to share what they'd like their legacy to be after, let's just say hypothetically, 5 years in your leadership role, what do you want your legacy to be? Yes, go ahead. You gotta, the further you move from headquarters, the more you can dress down. I know the camera's on, but we're like 1,500 miles from headquarters. People wear blue jeans and cowboy boots and almost never wear a tie. But I get that piece, yeah. That wasn't quite where I was headed, but that's just okay, because I almost never wear a tie myself. Yeah, good. Or I don't know what the Army's saying. As a Marine say, oorah. There's another one for the Army. It wasn't there when I was in. What's the number one leadership legacy you could have? Number one. Integrity is a core value. Yeah, moving other leaders through the pipeline so they're ready now. What are some great one-on-one questions? Start, stop, and continue to do. What else? Yeah, very good. What's on your plate, what's on your mind, what's on fire. I like those 3 the best because people they get it right away. Go, man. Because if you ask them what you should start, stop, and continue to do, sometimes they're not ready. It's almost the team of the organization. But when you talk about what's on your plate and what's on your mind and what's on fire, they'll tell you. Now, the whiners usually say everything's on fire. I need more help. Could you hire 10 more people? That ain't happening. In the private sector, you know what they would say? Nobody's coming. That's what they would say. So, yeah. All right. So we got core values. You're in tune with your core values. Resonate every day with them. You might watch the newspapers. It's just overdue for something to break. There's got to be somebody who's going to do something. There you go. They were not in touch with their core values. You send them that last sheet on there, which we now have. We've added humility, which belongs on there. Good. Any final question? Any comment? Oh, you're welcome. It was my pleasure. Todd, thank you. Yeah, that's it. That's all I know, folks. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know anything else. That's it.
Sharing your time with us. I want you all to know that he specifically rearranged some of his work schedule so that he could come and do our training.
Thank you. Good. Thank you.
right, so first of all, a gigantic thank you to everybody who came during the last break and made their donations. We got to $5,656.40, so that's awesome. I also want to make a special thank you to Chapter 3. They came and made a very large donation from the chapter, which we really, really appreciate, in addition to the rebate that they donated. Also, thank yous to folks who donated prizes for the raffle, to Region 4, to Chapter 21, 375, 6, 381, 19, 3, 396, and 121. Thank you all so much for bringing things from your part of the country to share with everyone else. I'm going to read off names and a couple of chapter numbers. If you hear your name, it means you won a prize, and they are out on a table just outside the room, so you don't have to walk all the way down the hall. Just outside the room, and your name's on a little sticky on it, so please don't forget to come pick up your item before you head out this afternoon. So chapters 3, 104, and 311 have prizes on the table. Dicka Pedasano, Charlotte Mukai, Roland Harper, Lloyd Fujimoto, Michelle, and I'm sorry if I butcher your last name, Place, sorry. Bridget Craven, Glenn Todd, Howard White, Linda Lentes, Brittany Tisano, Jamie Robinson, Richard Hackley, Katie Smith, Craig Carter, Joe Hibbs, Sharon Reese, and Valerie Allen. Thank you to all of you for your donations, and to everyone else. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, Leonard has a PAC update for us.
First of all, let me just say thank you. With all of the monies that we collected today, including the rebate donations, we are at $7,970.88. Now, for those of you that are waiting so that your drawn ticket is at the top of the pile, the time is now. Okay? We'll be out there when you leave, and you can make those last-minute contributions, and the ticket will end up on the top.
For the
now,
moment.
whether or not they get drawn from the top, that's another matter, okay? Now, for the prizes that were donated from the chapters throughout the country, those will be drawn, and you can pick them up tomorrow night. And then we will actually do the drawing for the top 4 prizes right there at the gala dinner, all right? So we'll hold off on those 4 and just sustain the mystery. Okay. So again, thank you very much, and by all means, use your FMA pack.
Okay, thank you, FMA. Katie has a weather update for us.
Hey, folks. At this time, OPM has not issued a statement on whether or not federal buildings are going to be open tomorrow due to the snow, so we are all eagerly waiting. There are 3 things that can happen tomorrow. 1, OPM does not close any buildings and we go about our business as usual. OPM closes all of the buildings, and so we don't have our appointments. Or 3, we are on a 2-hour delay. What that would mean is our meetings get pushed back. I would highly recommend that everyone call the offices of their representatives and senators at their meeting tomorrow morning and see if they're working on a regular schedule, or if their 9 o'clock meeting is going to be pushed back, or it needs to be rescheduled altogether. If you have any concerns about this, please come see me. I know some of you have come up to me and say, I only have my government-issued phone, I can't make that call. Come see me, we'll make the call on my phone, no worries. Our issue briefs are out already on the table, on the registration table. They're also going to be available to be picked up tomorrow morning at breakfast. I am going to be at breakfast tomorrow morning, bright and early, 7 o'clock. And so if you have any questions, please come see me then. Also, if you can't find me or if I'm talking with someone else, Greg's going to be available, Todd's going to be available, the board is going to be available. We'll figure everything out, not to worry. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Breakfast tomorrow will be from 7 to 9. We'll have the food set up in the vendor room, and we'll be eating across the hall like we did today. And then we will also, if we do get snowed in, we'll have this room available to us tomorrow also. So we're hoping that we'll be on the hill instead, but we'll see. As Dan said, when this area prepares for that substance known as snow, it gets kind of interesting. Tonight, to go to the national office, if you're not sure about the Metro and you want to go in a group, if you meet in the lobby at 6 o'clock, look for Latoria, and she will show you how to get there. Now, a message from Latoria is you can't go to the national office if you haven't turned in both your surveys. Do not get on Latoria's bad side. Also, if you do not want to carry home your binders, feel free to give them back to her. She will recycle them. You can just take the disc home or whatever part of your binder you're interested in. So she will recycle them and use them again next year. As Doris from A-View said this morning, you are the chosen ones. You know, not only are you chosen to be managers of people, but you are chosen by your fellow managers to be here and to represent them at this historic occasion, our 100th anniversary. So I want to commend each and every one of you, and I want to thank you for being here. I'm really thrilled to be able to share this occasion with you. So happy 100th birthday, Team FMA. I know Mike Stiles would not forgive me if I didn't say Team FMA at least once at the convention. You guys have been great the whole time. I hope all of your meetings on the Hill are productive. We will look forward to hearing about them when you get back. As Katie said, if you need any help at all rescheduling, we will all be there tomorrow morning to help you. If you need any help at all with anything tomorrow, don't hesitate to ask us. We will be around. Well, Greg and I probably won't be, but Latoria and Katie will be. So if you have any last-minute questions or comments, I'd like to open the floor at this time. Anybody have anything they would like to say? Okay, then I look forward to seeing you at the national office for our open house. Chapter 21 is hosting us tonight, so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.